And so, yeah, let's quickly take a look at this matchup. Arash, of course, running a very fast-paced offensive Calyrex Shadow Rider team. He's got a lot of classic support. And Santi running the classic kind of Tornadus Kyogre core. Now, there's also a Serena on that team. That Serena is going to be really essential in kind of blocking priority attacks from Arash. That's mainly going to be the Fake Out from the Incineroar and that Grassy Glide from that Rillaboom. And the main thing I'm looking at here, Rose, is going to be the Weavile from Santi. Weavile is such an interesting supportive option, one of the fastest Fake Out users, and can actually match up really well specifically into Calyrex Shadow Rider, as it can just get a one-hit KO with its Dark types attacks into Calyrex.
Yeah, I was looking at that as well, and obviously because of the super effective nature of a lot of these Pokemon, and looking at the speedy nature of that Regieleki into that Kyogre on Santino's team, this matchup looks very, very positionally focused, and that's pretty classic of a lot of the matches that we are seeing in Series 10 format. So I'm very excited to get a chance to see how both of these players do match up against each other. I do think that Arash is in a very good position of having that very speedy team. Maybe that will lend itself really well into this particular matchup, but Santino as well, I do feel like has a very strong team with that Kyogre being able to go for those big water spouts, and the fact that this is the only Kyogre in the entire Players Cup 25th Anniversary Invitational, that just gets me really excited to see these teams in action. So, Aaron, I think it's about time we just jump into the action and see this match play out.
Let's get started, Rose. I think so much about this matchup is how both players position their restricted Pokemon, because both restricted Pokemon on both sides are very weak and can just get one shot by a Pokemon from the opposing end. And so as a result, you can see neither player actually leads with a restricted Pokemon here.
Yeah, and that's kind of classic, I feel like, of what you're kind of expecting out of this format. You don't want to be put into a position where you are going to lose that restricted Pokemon so early. So I love that Santino is actually going to be leading with that Rillaboom and that Weavile. And then Arash has that Urshifu as well as that Regieleki, both really postured to position themselves to deal with that restricted Pokemon if it had come out first.
Yeah, exactly. And I honestly really like Santi's position right now because he has two Pokemon that get access to Fake Out. Urshifu is obviously going to be quite weak to the Rillaboom. And the Regieleki, maybe you can go for an electric type attack that doesn't really do any damage into Rillaboom, and maybe you can try to Volt Switch out into Weavile, for example, and get some better positioning. But as you can see here, the Regieleki just doesn't match up very well offensively into either Pokemon. So Arash trying to play it a little bit safe on turn one. I like the Protect, right? It protects from either Fake Outs, and Santi just having this dual Fake Out pressure is so strong. Fake Out has been historically one of the best moves in VGC and continues to be, especially with no more Dynamax.
Yeah, you are going to see, oh my gosh, a feint on the Weavile?
No
way! That is so unusual to get a chance to see on Weavile, and that's going to be just a one-hit knockout.
Goodness.
Santi, holy cow! Just reading that Protect perfectly from Arash.
Wow, feint is an option that it feels like we haven't seen in so long, and it's back, right? I mean, like the reason why Series 10 is, I think, so cool is because it reminds me so much of older restricted or non-restricted formats and older formats in general, where you had multiple Fake Out users. Like we were just talking about, I think Fake Out's just a lot stronger now that Dynamax is no longer around. Of course, one of the downsides is that you can't flinch Dynamax Pokemon. So wow, I mean, what a strong start, right? And that's a pretty safe play for Santi to make, because even if Arash decides to attack with the Urshifu there, the feint basically breaks the Focus Sash, right? So that was like a super, super safe play. And it works out even better for Santi because Arash actually decided to go for that Detect, right? And so you just get a free knockout to start off the battle. And, that is a phenomenal turn for Santi.
Yeah, oh my gosh, that puts Santi in such a commanding position when it comes down to just ensuring that one of those big threats in that Urshifu is going to be completely removed from the field. Now, Arash is in this position where you have that Shadow Rider Calyrex in front of the Weavile, and that's really scary. That's a very, very scary position to be in right now.
It is, yeah. And the other thing is that Rillaboom does get access to knockoff. So the thing is that Santi potentially has two Pokemon that can knock out the Calyrex right now, but looks like he's actually going to opt for the switch into the Serena. This is specifically to block any priority attacks like that Fake Out, like that Grassy Glide. But Arash doesn't go for either priority attack, as we've seen. It's going to be an Astral Barrage. Let's see how much this does.
Ooh, that does a significant chunk of damage to both Rillaboom and Serena on Santi's side of the field. And the U-turn out from Rillaboom as well. Oh my gosh. That hang on is so huge.
Arash making the right play there, doesn't get baited into going for that priority attack, but misses out on the knockout. What's the Rillaboom going to go for? Is there a knockoff here? It is going to be knockoff. It's going to go into that Calyrex Shadow Rider, and that's just another KO.
Oh my gosh, and losing your restricted Pokemon so early. That is such a difficult position to be in because Santi has yet to reveal that fourth and final Pokemon that he has brought to this game number 1. That is so exciting to see for Santi's particular position in this matchup, but it's not over yet. Let's see how Arash can fare with this Rillaboom that gets a chance to be at full HP going back into this game.
These first 2 turns have been as wild as it gets. Like Santi's Rillaboom, it literally looks like hung on with 1 HP there. And if Rillaboom goes down there, this is a completely different match because then Arash's Calyrex Shadow Rider can very likely just snowball the game with all of these Astral Barrages. And so, yeah, I mean, what a critical survival there. Arash really making the best play possible that turn, but unfortunately misses out on the knockout. That really speaks to how bulky Rillaboom can be and one of the reasons why it's such a staple in this format. And now Arash is in a really tricky position with 2 Pokemon pressuring with priority Grassy Glide from the opposing end, and Santi still having that Kyogre potentially in the back as well. It's going to be a difficult one to close out. And one thing that also makes this more difficult is the Serena, should it stick around, will be able to prevent Grassy Glides from the Rillaboom even into the Kyogre. And dual Grassy Glide here just knocks out poor Regieleki. That's 3 KOs in 3 turns.
Wow, getting a chance to see that Grassy Glide from this arena, obviously, with Queenly Majesty, Arash doesn't really have other choice except to go for a non-priority move. So that's Arena also going to be able to take that U-turn very, very safely, and Arash being at full HP.
Yeah, and you can see how, Arash's team is so hyper-offensive, but can't protect with Regieleki, right? And he was already so far behind in this game specifically after that turn 2, so there wasn't really very much that he could do. And this is kind of how fast-paced Series 10 can be. Both players are using very hyper-offensive teams, very frail Pokemon, especially on Arash's end, right? And you can see how in this format, it's not just about the restricted Pokemon. Santi didn't even need to bring out his restricted Pokemon in Kyogre in that last one. The knockoff on Rillaboom, so crucial, as well as Weavile being a Dark-type Pokemon that can threaten the Calyrex Shadow Rider. So to know now that Rillaboom has knockoff, can get that 1-hit KO, and can even survive. And this is so interesting. One thing I wanted to mention is that Serena really actually kind of felt like the MVP of that last game because it forces Arash to play in a certain way, right? Like, you just have to respect the Serena in general, because if you even waste a single turn with, the Fake Out or the Grassy Glide from Rillaboom, Santi can just get so much momentum. Another big question I have is, what is the item on Kyogre? You typically see something like a Mystic Water, for example, but Choice Scarf could make a very big difference in this matchup as it could allow it to just outspeed that Calyrex and go for Water Spout. So on this turn 1, Santi's in a position where if you're nervous about the priority, you can just hard switch Weavile out into the Serena. As you can see, Arash is basically debating, do I actually want to go for priority? If Serena comes in, neither Fake Out or Grassy Glide, really your best 2 attacks, are going to go off. So it looks like he's, potentially looking to cover for that option. But that's what makes Serena so strong here. Even if Santi doesn't switch it in, you still have to respect that option.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's
he doesn't switch.
Oh my gosh, no switch here yet. We are going to see the Calyrex Protect, though, as the Weavile goes for the Fake Out. Rillaboom not going to be able to use the move that it had selected for this particular turn. And a huge Water Spout going to be coming out from Santi's side of the field is going to bring that Rillaboom to about half health.
So I think Kyogre being so willing to go for that Water Spout indicates to me it's one of 2 things. One, the more likely scenario is that it is Choice Scarf, and Santi is just confident that you're going to outspeed the Calyrex Shadow Rider. And so you can make that play with absolute confidence, saying, hey, I'm just going to outspeed you. I get to deny any potential damage from Rillaboom. Or maybe Santi was making a really hard read, but I think Choice Scarf feels like the reasonable assumption here. So that was a super safe play for Santi to make on turn 1. I love the lead adjustment here, by the way, as well. I think he might have been covering for a potential Incineroar lead this time around. But now, once again, Santi's in a position where you can just swap out that Weavile into Serena, and we can see that Arash actually doesn't have Woodhammer or any other non-priority grass type attack with this Rillaboom, meaning that he can't knock out the Kyogre, he can't do damage to him. That makes this so much harder for Arash to play the game.
Yeah, we are going to see the Incineroar switch in here, and that definitely puts Arash into a good position. That Incineroar obviously getting a chance to have access to things like Parting Shot and Snarl, which can really help it to deal with that special attack coming out from the Kyogre. But Serena going to be coming back in here, switching out for the Weavile, protect from a potential Grassy Glide, and Kyogre going to go for another Water Spout here. Arash just switched in the Incineroar to get knocked out.
Yeah, and it feels like you can't just give up your restricted Pokemon in Calyrex. So I think that play makes a ton of sense. Santi's just been able to make really safe plays, and the lack of another grass option here on the Rillaboom, just makes this so difficult. Now I'm looking at that Regieleki, right? As you can see, Regieleki is actually Choice Scarfed, and so that makes such a big deal in this matchup because it means that you can outspeed the Kyogre and just click Thunder into that slot. And so right now, Arash is debating, what combination of two do I want out, right? If you bring out the Calyrex, then for the next switching, you can either have Vincent or Alecki next to it. And so, yeah, I think like Alecki feels like it needs to come out. But one thing that's so tough about Alecki in this matchup is we saw in that last game, it doesn't do anything into the grass type Pokemon in Rillaboom or the Serena on Santi's side. And Santi can just, launch these Grassy Glides out. And it felt like Incineroar was the only Pokemon Arash could have even sacrificed. And Santi just has still the Serena, still has, a potential Rillaboom in the back. That means you could just use Grassy Glide continuously, can't decrease that damage output with Intimidate, can't switch in and have something that resists it. So it's been a really tough start for Arash. I think part of it is the Kyogre having the Choice Scarf here. Maybe Arash wasn't anticipating, and I think Santi just off to a really strong start with an amazing lead and amazing first 2 turns of the game.
Well, I mean, especially because Santi didn't even review for your strategy versus Arash. So I absolutely agree with you here. I think the Regieleki has to come out and hope that it is going to be faster than this Kyogre, so you can get some big damage onto it to remove the ability of Santi's Kyogre going for a Water Spout once again. But as we know, Kyogre gets access to a ton of other coverage options like Thunder, Ice Beam, also single target water type attacks. So there's a lot that I feel like Santi can go for, except you are locked into that Water Spout because of the Choice Scarf that is on that Kyogre.
Yeah, and I think, Arash still has plenty of comeback potential right now, especially because he knows he has Choice Scarf on Regieleki, but Santi doesn't know that, right? And so, that being said, like, depending on how Kyogre is trained, sometimes actually regular Regieleki, if you're just, max speed, can outspeed anyway. So Santi, they will probably look to switch out the Kyogre here, but doesn't switch. So does Grassy Glide here. How much damage does it do? Okay.
About half here, but that means that Regieleki can absolutely go for this Thunder right into the Kyogre. That accuracy going to be boosted up by the rain, and that Kyogre will get knocked out here.
And I think that maybe Santi's comfortable with this because he feels confident in the non-restricted Pokemon he has in the back. And my goodness, another clutch survival as Serena hangs on with just a sliver of HP. And yeah, I think at this point, Santi is probably thinking, okay, Kyogre, you've done your job. You've gotten the knockout Incineroar. That's actually really crucial. And more importantly, you've just kind of distributed damage and started off this game really, really well, right? The Rillaboom is really low. And this makes complete sense to me now. Santi actually has that Rillaboom in the back. If you switched it out last turn, then, you would take a lot of damage, risk of potential paralysis. And now because Arash's Incineroar is eliminated, Santi's in a position where he can just click Grassy Glide, Grassy Glide, Grassy Glide, right? That Rillaboom has Fake Out as well. And so the other tricky thing here is that Arash's Rillaboom feels very, not useless, but it just can't do much other than click U-turn, right? You can't Fake Out, you can't Grassy Glide because of the Serena on the opposing end. So Arash in a really, really tough position right now.
Yeah, there's really not a whole lot that Rillaboom on Arash's side of the field can go for because of the Queenly Majesty ability that is on Serena. So it's pressuring a lot. Plus, the Rillaboom that Arash has is very, very low. So I feel like at this position, yes, you can kind of switch it out here and switch in the Rillaboom. But, what does that really net Arash in this position? You have to go for a very safe play here, protecting the Calyrex. But we are going to see the Grassy Glide connect with the Protect on the Calyrex, and Serena just U-turn here right to the Rillaboom that switched in.
That is
gosh.
An excellent play. I think Arash actually made the one play that could keep him in the game, right? Like the hope, I think, is hope for Santi to just launch Grassy Glide into both slots, right? So then you protect the Calyrex Shadow Rider, you get the Rillaboom in, and then the Rillaboom, then doesn't take very much damage and then can maybe do something the subsequent turn. But Santi going for the U-turn, right? Like, Arash had the opportunity to actually stay in with Regieleki and click Thunder into that slot, but obviously Regieleki felt like he was in a really tough position. And Santi's supporting cast right now is just so early on. So I like the Kyogre coming out early, putting on pressure and forcing Arash to, basically switch Indian Center and sacrifice it, puts Santi in such a good late game position. So, I think at this point, it's just so difficult for Arash to do anything, especially with Weavile coming out, right? You cycled in fake out, so you can fake out into the Regieleki slot.
Yeah.
You can Grassy Glide into the Calyrex Shadow Rider. So it really feels like Santi has basically played a flawless game. And this is a very tough matchup for Arash, to be honest. And I think he made a good adjustment bringing in the Incineroar, but unfortunately, the leads did not pan out the way he was expecting to. And with how hyper offensive both teams are, it feels like you really need to get the leads right. Otherwise, the game could just snowball so quickly, as we've seen, especially in this match.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about the snowball. And I love that you brought up the Incineroar, because Weavile and Rillaboom are both physical attackers. So you would love to be able to drop the attack of both of those Pokemon. But the Grassy Glide coming out from Rillaboom is enough to knock out that Shadow Rider Calyrex. And it is just Regieleki now against the world. Going for a Thunderbolt here into the Weavile. It doesn't do nearly enough to be able to knock it out. And Weavile revealing that Triple Axle now.
Triple Axle, such a strong offensive option, and when it hits 3 times like that, you can see how much damage it can do, right? And so, I think, this was going to be tricky for Arash coming into the matchup. He can't really bring in that Nile Ego very easily. The choice scarf on Kyogre is what makes such a big difference here as well, right? I think going into this match, I and you both of us, I think we're expecting, Tornadus to be a really relevant factor, right? Because it's like, oh yeah, you set up the Tailwind and then Kyogre outspeeds everything. Well, hey, if you have a choice scarf on Kyogre, you don't even need the Tailwind, and that actually makes